Hey beautiful soul, this is Jessica Go. I'm a trauma coach in childhood, relationship and emotional abuse. And what I want to share with you are the 4 different types of programs that can run in our energetic field, in our physical body, in our psychology. And it's really important for you to understand that these programs can run at the same time or different times in our life. And what can you do about it? So the first programming is called military conditioning, and this occurs for people who suffer from satanic ritual abuse, where you've been conditioned most likely in the first 18 years of your life, because that's the age where you can escape from this environment and have the knowledge and some form of information and awareness in how you can seek freedom elsewhere. And so what happens is satanic ritual abuse is run by typically an elite group of people, men and women, more so men. And what happens is there are a ring of people who engage in molesting, abusing, in all forms, whether it's sexual abuse, verbal abuse, physical abuse, torture, these innocent babies and toddlers and children right into their teenage years, to program them dark and demonic forces, which is run by Lucific agendas. And so you might think, whoa, this sounds pretty extreme. The truth is this exists, and this cult exists all over the world. Millions and millions and millions of babies and children being raped all over the world, that are either in people's homes, in churches. So it's very hush hush, because they don't want anyone to find out about these dark demonic matters. And these people could be politicians, extremely affluent businessmen, or highly reputable medical professionals. And what they get out of it is that they feed off the energy from the innocent to give them power and immortality. That's the idea behind it. And what happens is that there's people called caregivers, and these caregivers are the ones who basically, you could say, look after the babies until they're a toddler phase. They're not the biological parents, and some could be the biological parents. This is quite common as well. Or the caregiver would be the person who bought those babies and children through child trafficking and look after them and groom them, where by all means they're not treated with love at all. They're treated with absolute hate, and they get money out of it by allowing these elitist circles to feed off the innocent young babies and toddlers by abusing them physically, emotionally, verbally, because it feeds their dark and demonic forces. So this stuff does exist, and people who suffer from satanic ritual abuse, once they're free from that ring, this cult, it's really hard for them to engage with society and trust people because of what has happened to themselves, where they've been violated. How could they trust anyone? And so they would go through extreme self-hatred and self-torture, being homeless, right? Because they don't have the capacity to be able to look after themselves after going through decades and decades of torture and abuse. So this is called military conditioning or programming, right? So you have to withstand the abuse in all forms, and it's just heartbreaking to hear that, from stories from people who join my webinars and my clients as well. And the thing is that you can change this around. And typically people who suffer from satanic ritual abuse, they've been hexed on. Black magic has been cursed upon them since they were babies. So they allow dark and demonic forces to enter into their bodies and create soul contracts. So these dark and demonic forces feed off these innocent children who grow up to be adults. And they feed off them because whether you believe it or not, dark and demonic forces do exist in this reality and other realities. And dark and demonic forces need a physical body to stay alive because it feeds their energy. So without a body, they don't feed off any energy. So this is why these dark and demonic forces have created these cults and rings of satanic ritual abuse, so they can keep feeding off energy from the innocent. So that's one programming. The second programming is called childhood conditioning, and this occurs in the first 8 years of your life, where you've been programmed by beliefs and values and cultural values from your parents that was passed on their parents and their parents. And this is typically 7 generations back, which is called epigenetics. So you subscribe to all the good and the bad values of your ancestral history from the past 7 generations. And so you might feel or think a certain way about a certain issue or matters, and that's because of the way you were programmed by your parents or your siblings or your caretakers if you're adopted. And that we start to create these programs about false beliefs of ourselves. So for example, with me, this sort of programming has deeply wounded my ability to receive money and abundance, and also to retain money and abundance, because I was shown at a very early age that my parents had to work very hard. They had to work and slaughter themselves on the weekends in the market selling tools. And then at the age of 15, I started to carry heavy boxes of tools. And as a little girl, I started to sell tools as well. And so this creates this slavery consciousness, this poverty consciousness that I have to slaughter myself to earn a little amount of money. And so this is an old program. And so the good news is that you can break free from this program, which I have successfully done, where I was able to receive a large sum of money in a short period of time. For example, over 20K in 2 weeks in my business, and not depleted it completely, but to find ways to leverage it and grow in wealth, because I was able to reprogram myself to an abundance mindset, or to tap into the energy of unconditional love for myself, where things just flow to me. So this can happen for you too, if you have the right resources, the right mentor and strategies and healing that's needed for you to break away from an old paradigm and move into a new paradigm, which is your highest timeline, your highest potential. So that's just an example. It could be, why is it that you're stuck in a rut with relationships? Why is it that you're not attracting the right people, or you're not attracting anyone at all? And this is coming back to your relationship with your parents. What was the programming that you were taught about love? For me, what I learned about love was it was quite dysfunctional, that love is dysfunctional. Therefore, I allow myself to tolerate gaslighting and bullshit stories and lies and betrayal and toxicity in my engagement with men, because that's how I was programmed with my relationship with my father, and watching and witnessing my mother as the role play of being the female counterpart, where she tolerated physical and verbal abuse at home, and I watched that, and she didn't even stand up for herself. That programmed me that it's not safe to be with men, that women have the right to be abused, and that they can't use their voice because it was never safe. And that was the programming that I had, and so I had troubles expressing myself, to express my needs, to set healthy boundaries, because that's how I was programmed in my family dynamics. Because this was passed on from the previous generation and the previous generation as well. They weren't able to heal and manage their childhood traumas. So these childhood traumas manifested in adult trauma, and it was passed down onto myself. So the third programming is the patriarchal programming. So what does this mean? The patriarchal programming, this is cultural and society, where there was a point in time where men took over the world instead of women. And so women were the very first who led communities and created movements and tribes. And men were threatened by this because they saw women as being very powerful beings. And so what happens is the men started to kill women, started to suppress and oppress them from their healing abilities and their light. And so that's when the patriarchal system has been created, where women were less than men, and inequality, and that women were treated as slaves, as child givers, and for the mere pleasure of fulfilling a man's sexual desires. So women were kept very low, and men abused the power by doing that and influencing society. Hence why, there's this push for equality, for equal rights and equal pay for women. And you can see this happening throughout history, where there's these movements of women who've had enough of being treated like second-class citizens of the world, when we do have the same form of intelligence and rights as men. And so how does this show up in our day-to-day? Well, it shows up because men might feel they have the need to control women, to abuse them, such as domestic violence and narcissism. And so women would tolerate that, and they would feel that they're worthy of that. And this can also go for men as well, men witnessing their fathers abusing and beating up women, or their mother. And so they've been programmed that it's okay to do that when it comes to their beloved. And so this is the patriarchal programming. And another thing is that the patriarchal programming is that women have to suppress themselves. We don't have a voice. We can't be in power. And so you can start to see a shift in the world, where you're starting to see more highly influential women, business women, politicians, experts all over the world starting to emerge, because we are starting to break free from the patriarchal system, such as government and politics, that's no longer working for society anymore, because they're not serving the people, they're serving themselves. So this is what I mean about the patriarchal system, where there's an imbalance in energy and power and influence that's creating a lot of havoc in the world right now, where society, citizens all over the world feel so disempowered. And you look at a classic example, the Chinese Communist Party, where they're trying to dominate the world. Look at who's the leader, a male figure. And there's dark and demonic forces running that sort of energy of communism to take over the world and infiltrate the world with viruses that's been bioengineered by them, so we can cripple down onto our knees and be suppressed and oppressed by them, which gives them the upper hand and influence and power, and also cash to control the world, where all the other countries are suffering massively economically through their finances, where a lot of businesses have to shut down and people made redundant because of this man-made virus. So the fourth programming is the dark and demonic forces. So this is coming back to those who've been placed on hexes, black magic. They feel possessed by them. So this is one extreme where you could feel possessed by them. You act from a place that isn't really you, and you don't know how to break free from these entities. So that's one way to look of it. The other way to look of it is what we see in the media, what we see in the news, what we see in advertising, what we see on social media and social media influencers. And what happens is all these companies and governments and influencers are trying to promote a product or a service, maybe a vaccine even, right? Whatever it is, promoting these things, such as Bill Gates, wanting to vaccinate the whole world because he's the richest man, he has a voice. And, this is coming back to the patriarchal system that's been broken. And it's also coming from a place that there is no free will for all. And this is coming back from the dark and demonic forces, because they do want to target the influential and rich people, so they can use them as a way to influence the world, so the world can collapse and cave into dark and demonic forces. As I've mentioned before, they need energy to survive. They need a body to survive. And so, things that we're constantly getting bombarded with through advertising, eat eggs because it's good for protein and it's tasty and all these other things. But has there been research, like solid research, shown why we need to eat eggs, right? That's just one example. Another example is you need to have collagen, collagen powder, collagen in your creams, all this sort of stuff that's been marketed to us, that if you want to look younger and want to feel less inflamed and have healthier hair and nails and all this sort of stuff, get collagen. However, what's the solid research behind it? Because when we read the labels of these products, right, if you read it, you're actually just reading the marketing messages to break down the scientific research behind it, when really it's not scientific at all. It's just a marketing message being sold to you just for these companies to generate a gazillion amount of money for this particular product and service. So I really hope this serves you. And the thing is that to address all of these different programmings, right, is to find the right mentor, the right strategies, the right techniques, and to have the right mindset in place for you to truly anchor in your own sovereignty and divinity, to trust your own discernment to make the right choices for you and for others, where you know that deep down inside your heart and soul, you're being sold to. Deep down inside your heart and soul, this doesn't feel right for you. You know that you are being influenced into a program that's not yours, right? So if you truly feel that you are ready to break free from childhood conditioning, military programming, if you do suffer from satanic ritual abuse, to break free from the patriarchal system, right, where you want to anchor in more of the embodied feminine energy, whether you're a man or a woman, because this feminine energy is important for both sexes, right? Because for a man to embody the feminine energy, it allows him to be more anchored, more grounded, more present for himself and his beloved, and to feel that who he is enough. And that is the same for women. Instead of chasing for the next relationship and the next relationship, knowing that who you are is enough. So, and also, breaking free, like really using your discernment to catch out, okay, am I being sold here with advertising and marketing to something that's not really aligned with me? Like, do I really need collagen? Do I really need to eat eggs? All these sort of things. Use your discernment, what feels right for you. And this is something that I can help you and teach you in my 3-month container called Find Yourself and Trust. And if you like to learn more, if this is right for you, this is right for you if you do suffer from satanic ritual abuse, low self-esteem, high anxiety levels, panic attacks, sexual abuse, relationship abuse, childhood trauma and adult trauma, and you've tried clinical therapy, you've tried self-development, and it hasn't given you the results that you're looking for, and you're pulling at your wits' ends as to, what can I do to truly heal myself from the inside out and be sustainable in my journey ahead to the point where I don't need to go from one program to another, to go from one therapist to another, to go from one coach and healer to another, right? And so if this sounds like you, and you're not heavily reliant on medication, and you're not suffering heavily from neurological mental health conditions, then this path is right for you. Simply book yourself a free 30-minute clarity call just below, and this is a free consultation with myself on Zoom to see if trauma recovery is right for you and if I am the right person who can help you. So I truly hope that this video blog serves you